Woohoo! We're here.
Finally, I've been looking forward to this day. Susie, do you want to? My partner, Susie, in Ireland, Ramsey is backstage helping us with all the stuff. I'm in Vermont, and our guest happens to be in Vermont too. Susie, you want to do your magical
Indeed.
intros?
I'm very excited too. I'm glad to be back from my holidays, and I missed you guys and I missed our show. But what a beautiful way to come back into it. I get to introduce our special guest for this evening. And I've been fascinated by the books that I've read of hers. But from Vermont in the USA, we have Flo Aeveia Magdalena. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Aeveia being her soul name. And I look forward to hearing more about how that name came about too. Flo is a well-known author at this stage. She's been traveling the globe, creating this incredible soul support system, this global community. And she's been, I suppose, the midwife of souls for many, many years now, with facilitator trainings and certifications available as well, and really making a difference in many people's lives, helping them to, I suppose, feel more connection and do a lot more collaborating. And we're glad you're connecting and collaborating with us today, Flo. So a warm welcome from Kathy Ramsey and I at in12d.
Thank you both. Thank you.
We love to kick off the podcast every week with that burning question, of ordinary people, who seem ordinary, leading really living extraordinary lives. And I was reading over your bio, your mission, your vision, a lot of really cool information about your story so far on your website. And let's see where you feel like jumping in. Where did this all begin? Or, who was Flo as a young girl or a young woman? And when did it really begin for you?
Well, I was raised a strict Protestant and sang in the choir, went to church every Sunday, and began to feel in the church that there was something special there, not necessarily the words or even the people, but more that there was a presence. And I didn't think much of it. Then I had my son in 1970, and I was breastfeeding him. And at that time, I saw him as a monk, and I was a monk, and he was passing me in the hall. And that was the first time I really had any, what we could think of as an extraordinary experience. And then I was a nursing student, and Elizabeth Kubler-Ross came to speak with us one evening at my college. And she was talking about, after she said, "Oh, the reporters have left, so I can tell you this." And she played a recording of spirit making sound that is not usually captured in the human ear. And she was talking about the extended perception and awareness that we have. And of course, she works with death and dying. So that was very interesting. And the next day in the CAF, everybody's going, "Oh, what do you think?" And I said, we don't know. There's so much we don't know, particularly in medicine. Think about all of the new things we've learned. So that was kind of starting it. And then in 1979, I went to training as a student of Patricia Hayes. She just actually died 2 weeks ago. And she was, at that point, if we're talking about 1979, she was traveling to different places, and she traveled to Connecticut. And I took a class with her, and then I decided to sign up for 2 years. And she taught me about the location of the soul, and she taught me about all of the energy practices that we can use. And I was in nursing school, so I used those with patients. And I ended up in psychiatry, being able to open my awareness to assist others. And yet, I remember, like, my neck was so tight, and I was so type A personality. And I really didn't trust myself. I was insecure in what I knew. And it took many, many years kind of to develop that awareness. And I kept at it, I really kept at it, even though I felt many times like I didn't know what I was doing almost. You know how that sense,
Yeah.
hey, I'm coming forward here and I know these are true principles, but how do I incorporate them into my life? And then I was channeling also from what I learned from Patricia Hayes. And I was also at that time thinking very much about how my awareness could actually create something different, something new. And so when I was taking those courses, I then began to work with stress management with the Heart Association, one of their first classes before they actually admitted that stress had anything to do with heart disease. And then I worked for the American Lung Association, and I taught meditation during their smoke cessation classes. And I began to think about, okay, how can I live in the world like this?
Mhm.
I think it was probably when I met Jane in 1988. I was down in Washington, D.C., and I was doing readings at that point. And the readings are coming from this very amazing source called, they're called the Nameless Ones, and they have never been in a body. They're amorphous. And they were connecting to me since 1979. But in 1986, I actually heard them for the first time. And then I began to really channel them and felt much more comfortable not being responsible for what I was saying, but having them come and say through me what the truths are of the eternal awareness of all that is, that kind of thing. So in 89, I was with them and they began to connect me to Mary Magdalene. And then Mary Magdalene has connected me to soul recognition. And all of this starts to open me to an understanding that I have a role to play in the development of spirit in the world. And I was so far ahead of my time, actually. I mean, that's how I think about it. In
Yeah.
1979, that I kept pushing barriers, moving things out of the way because I couldn't stop. Like my
Yeah.
soul is so strongly saying this, this, this. And that's what I try to and endeavor to teach that. Like, listen to your soul, because your soul is your best friend. It's going to take you wherever you need to go. And it has your plan. It has your design inside. It has your blueprint. So all you need to do is follow that. And if I look back on my life, I have done that, but it was incremental. And I think we all have to understand that it's step by step.
So did you feel like at some point you were able to kind of surrender more? Like you had kind of uncovered this, maybe this inner voice, this kind of inner wisdom, obviously channeling as well, as well as that, but that it sort of it was like it had your back. Like you could surrender your personality and you could just go with the flow more and just allow it to kind of unfold. Like did things get easier, I suppose, as you went through it, I guess, and just built up probably a steady connection? Because obviously when you're channeling, is the channeling happening, intermittently, is it on tap? Like how was that showing up at the beginning? I'm curious.
Well, I was taught to channel by looking in people's eyes and
Okay.
to open to the design in the eyes. And then when the Nameless Ones came, I was in 1986, I was able to actually let go of any consciousness that I had about what I should do or shouldn't do, and begin to put together how the immediate sense of being with someone and the Nameless One's understanding of who they were would then enable me to just be like a channel, a byproduct of that process. And I used to hear them. And someone told me it was a Galway, Ireland accent, Susie.
Oh, wow, interesting.
Yeah. And when I went to Ireland, that was very like, oh, this is from Galway. But as I worked with them, I just began to speak and I didn't hear them anymore. So it was an evolution. And when I just speak it, then it was all very simple, very easy, and they did have my back, and I felt that for a long time. The responsibility is really something that I take very seriously in terms of speaking to people about who they are, why they're here, what they're going to unfold as in terms of their life, and to know that these beings who've never been here in a physical body know someone intimately, what they chose for their life, and can describe that for them so that they understand who they are. It's amazing,
Wow.
and it's something that I think we can all connect to if we know how to do that. And we're not taught that. It's my greatest feeling about this all is we're not taught it. All of us have this capacity to
Mm.
connect, to learn, to know, to be sure. And yet, we look at the world and we can't even figure out what truth is anymore. So it's really fascinating. So I think this is the answer. The soul's the answer, I think.
Totally. And I suppose it just seems to me that's what's needed for that unfoldment for everybody is the support. I think support and connection and that feeling like, okay, there's not just me in the world, there's more than one of us. And when people come together who are on similar journeys or similar paths, I think it definitely gets a little bit easier to follow that guidance. Because initially, if you feel isolated, you feel, oh my gosh, am I making this up? Or, is this really, can I trust this? There can be a lot of discomfort when you're moving out of, that comfort zone and listening to, I guess your soul is opening doorways, or,
Mhm.
it's taking you out of where you're comfortable. So it's not always straightforward or unicorns and rainbows, as I always say to people. It can be a challenging time as well.
Yes. And that's one of the reasons why our intent from the soul family here and from the nameless ones is to create a community of that support. And we've done it online, we've done it internationally, because if we have a place to go to listen, to hear, to connect, to ask questions, then it becomes much more available to us.
Mhm.
And steady, settled, and there's a sense of belonging, which we all want.
Definitely, definitely.
Because
Kathy?
we're all sort of breaking away from this patriarchy culture that has us on the treadmill, and we can't jump off. So having these places feels so important. You said something, location of the soul.
Yeah. So, well, this is what I've been taught, and I know that there are different ideas about it, but there's something called, if you think about biology and our skeletal system, there's a little pointed piece of cartilage that's at the base of the sternum. So right underneath the heart, right there at the rib cage, where the rib cage ends, and the soul is underneath that xiphoid process. So what we do together when we have our workshops and retreats is we go into that space and open that space, and then develop through different exercises and processes the ability for each individual to connect more fully with that and begin to hear and listen and talk, communicate, and extend and expand that.
Wow, beautiful. I wonder is that related to Sue Cooper's Heart of the Emergence? It's the same sort of place in the body.
Uh-huh. It could be. It could be. I don't know about that, but it could be.
Okay.
Sure.
Maybe if I get to have both of you in a room sometime, I'll ask that. You keep using the word remember, and in the groups that I work with, we work with that word a lot, because it feels like all of these things are our birthright, and we used to walk around doing life in that way, but we don't anymore. My astrologer friend, Marcia Wade, she was talking about Chiron, the wounded healer. And she said, our biggest wound is that we don't know why we're here. So it's definitely in the air. Can you talk about this? I mean, that's the name of your book, your Mary Magdalene book, I Remember Union. Do we all have access, and we just go in there and pull it back out?
Absolutely, we do. Yeah. I think if we really look at the human envelope of consciousness, our mind is so active, and we spend so much time thinking. And I just said that, I think. I think that this is, that to get to another place takes intention and practice and, in a sense, a collegial way of belonging to something ethereal. And we're not used to believing in the or ephemeral or anything that's not matter, right? So in the traditions of many spiritual families and cultures, it's to move us from dependence on the mind and move us into the heart and soul. And when we do that, we start to remember that we are really all one, that we all come from light. There's no separation, but we're not taught that. We don't experience that. And so my job, in a sense, is to bring people together to feel that, to experience it so deeply that it becomes reality. And in the 80s, I had year-long classes. People would come for a whole year, once a month. And we went into these past lives, which were absolutely dramatic. And I could never, I don't think I could ever redo it again. But what happened was we would see each other being killed, for example, in an Indian massacre or something. And then we would hold each other and we would do different spiritual processes. And when we came out of that, we'd look at each other and say, oh, that was you. Oh, that's where you died. And I realized that we're always going to be reincarnating and learning, and that the love never dies. It doesn't matter who you are or what you've lost, it'll come again. There's this sense of a cyclical recognition of belonging and union that I've experienced, and there's nothing that can take that away from me. And that's what I try to offer others in the work, particularly in soul recognition. And I Remember Union is about Mary Magdalene and Jesus Christ. I had this experience in 1989 with Mary Magdalene in a church where I actually saw Christ beckoning to me over the shoulder of a minister. I had been kind of told, in my mind, I don't hear very many words anymore, but I heard that, you have to go to church. And it was Maundy Thursday, and there I was in the church, and there was Christ. And then through a series of different experiences, he showed me how Mary Magdalene's story would open the consciousness of the 21st century. And we see that all the time. She's showing up everywhere, and so I have this very wonderful director and producer, and we've called the movie I Remember, little I, big R. And remembering is putting it together again, right? Remembering it. So I keep feeling like this is the time to activate our latent but yet very powerful wisdoms in a way that, in a sense, overshadows the depth of despair that we have in the world right now. And we have that in us. That's the, my sentence that I think that you used in the write-up was, what we think we have lost is but the promise of what is yet to come. That comes from Mary Magdalene, right from her. And she's saying, if we all remember we're light, and if we all connect and live from the soul, which has never happened before in the history of humanity, that everyone on the planet lived from the same point of experience or origin, that's how we move consciousness to the places where we can most experience the truth of who we are.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned movie. Does that mean there's a movie coming out?
Well, we're working on it. We're getting all the pieces together. Yes, but
I think we need it.
Yeah, we do. We definitely need I Remember. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a phenomenal story. You know, we're still only in the 80s with you know, when you had the experience of Mary Magdalene. And so what came next for you, Flo? I know in the 90s, I think was it 94 that you started working on the soul support systems. Was that right, with your friend?
Yes, with Jane and her significant other Albert. Yeah, the three of us worked on it. We realized when I moved to Vermont, my idea was to create an actual community of individuals living here.
Mm-hmm.
And we did that for about 3 years. And then the neighbors were like, well, there's a lot of people coming up and down the road. We don't know if, you know, and so there was a lot of acreage and a lot of opportunity. And so for those 3 years, we developed soul support systems. We created the nonprofit in Vermont, and we began to look at how we could take this information and understanding and actual experience. All of our work is experiential, to take that into different places, and also to bring people to the land, which we did. And so we created soul recognition at that same time. Now, that to me is the bliss of finding your origin, letting all of the other levels of trauma and memory of separation be released so that we can actually find the core of who we are, be in our soul, and live that. And right now we're doing 7-day retreats because it's so important to stay together in that field. We work with horses and learned about fields. We learned in Minchinhampton, there's a wonderful woman named Dawn who does, she has Hartshore, which is her herd is, where her herd is. And so we have gone there and learned how to work with the horses. And this is very fascinating. I first learned this in Arizona with Linda Kahanoff. If you go into a pen with a horse, every time you walk toward the horse, you enter into a different layer of their field. Mm-hmm. And when you do that, they will have some kind of movement, their tail or their ear or something. And if you experience that when you go through the level, you stop, sigh, and step back, the horse knows they've understood that you're there with them, not to do to them, but with them. And so we taught a lot of our students about the field through that understanding, so they could recognize when they're working with people, when they're going through their fields, how that works and how that actually affects us. You know, because when people come into our field without a responsible understanding of what that is, it's not as helpful or supportive. So we've used horses for a lot of different learning processes. And now in England, our facilitators who went through soul recognition training are putting together this EASE program, equine assisted soul experience, I think it's called EASE. And they are actually using the horses with the soul recognition, because when you have a horse or horses present, going into that space of soul is much easier. They just make it so fun. and they know exactly where to go. One time we had a gathering there, we had about 30 people, and there was this man, and he was down on the ground, and he was having a soul recognition spontaneously. We didn't even teach anything about it or anything. And there's a horse kicking the same leg, standing next to him, kicking one leg, which they don't do. And I went up and I said, George, I think the horse is trying to tell you to kick, to move your legs, to get the energy through, things like that. We have so many wonderful experiences, soul stories. Yeah.
That's so cool. I've just come back from a retreat that I was co-hosting in Mallorca, in Spain. And my friend who was co-hosting with me, She's based in Quebec actually, and she does a lot of sound baths. She uses Tibetan singing bowls, but in an equine environment. So she's been doing that for the last couple of years, and she was saying that it's just incredible when you're playing the bowls and all the people are in the center of the arena and what's happening. This field that you described is exactly what she was describing in that environment as well. And I've also seen horses being used for sort of in a constellation setting, where a person just relates to the horse, and it's just beautiful that there's this kind of resonance that happens between the animal. And I think it disarms us a little bit, because sometimes people have, trauma or whatever is in their system, and they can be, in a high alert or something. And I think the horses seem to bring this sense of ease and playfulness, which I think, and that kind of curiosity, which I think helps to kind of open up the space a little bit. So that sounds really interesting. Like that, in those week-long retreats, somebody's having just a spontaneous soul recognition. That must be quite a profound experience for the person, but to bear witness to.
Yes. It's just amazing what we can offer to each other when we have an environment that is completely free and open, respectful and honoring.
Beautiful. And from that point on, so if a person is in that experience, for example, they've gone on, maybe it's their first retreat or something, it could be their 10th, who knows, like there's no timeline, I guess, with those things. But is there support then afterwards, like to continue that? Is it like the expansion of the soul, to find out what the blueprint is, or to discover, is it about them coming more into alignment, or is it more about them, is it like a self-inquiry? Like, is there an inquiry into like, what is my purpose, or, why am I here? How does that work? What is that process like?
Well, people come with different points of focus.
Okay.
Some have relationship challenges. Some have physical challenges. Some have the idea that they'd like to learn their purpose or live more in their heart. Some people want to ground and don't know how to actually become fully human. We don't trust our spirit with our body a lot of times because it's just kind of dicey here. And so to make a safe environment where people can bring their spirit all the way through to the bottom of their feet, begin to actually be a spirit human, is part of it. And from that, then the soul guides what it is that unfolds. It's just as you and I were speaking about before, we just have to let it all happen, right? So in the soul recognitions, everyone is absolutely different, although it's a birthing of the soul into the body. We make sure that the soul is grounded into all the cells of the body so that we actually embody our soul as well as our spirit. So there's a pre-conference with me. There's a pre-conference call with everyone. There's facilitators meet for 3 weeks with each of the participants afterwards. And then we have a group call again, 1 or 2 of those a month later. We have free meditations from and I guess it would be in your afternoon. It's 8:30 a.m. on Monday through Friday. We have a meditation that's free. We have witnessing on Tuesdays, which is Heart Thread, which we haven't talked about, which is a way for individuals to listen to their heart and have that for 1 hour. It's a $50 charge, but we have a whole group of practitioners who do Heart Thread on Tuesday afternoons. We have the Nameless Ones talking free Saturday, this coming out the June 14th, I think it is, from 2 to 4. We have, or 12 to 2, I'm sorry, I think it's 12 to 2. We have the Nameless Ones speaking every month free. We have a free membership where people can come in. They can learn about all the things. They can listen to Mary Magdalene. They can listen to William Marshall, John Henry, who started the Heart Thread with me. They can listen to the Nameless Ones. We try to give as much as we can in terms of not just information and guidance, but an experience. Because once we have an experience, then we can always go back to that experience once we have it.
That's beautiful. What an offering. It's profound. I've been on your website and there's just so many places to kind of enter, and just that it's all free. It's very accessible for people. But I totally agree with you that like an experience on its own can be just like a random experience, and then an experience with information and knowledge can really become something special. That's for me, that's where transformation really starts to happen. But then even with the transformation, I think there's that sangha, that sense of community and support system and ongoing, practices. I think that's so important. I do a Mindful Monday free every week as well. And I can just see there are these anchor points then throughout your week to keep, I suppose it's to keep the connection and because we're never staying in the one place. We're always evolving, I guess. Like it's a continuing journey that we're all on. So that's really gorgeous. So I really recommend to everybody to check out Flo's website and all of those incredible offerings on there. And I know there's another book that I haven't read, but I'm really curious about it. It's Sunlight on Water. And it's about, soulful living. And I'm a practical person, Flo. I want to know the practicalities, like how can I fit it into my 9 to 5? What's the best way for me to have that soulful living experience? And I'm really curious because I'm fascinated by just the very fact of sitting in front of a body of water, watching the reflections of the light on water, the play of light on water is almost like it can be like a transmission, I think, in its own right. It can have such an effect. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about that if you would like to share.
Sure. Well, this was a book that the Nameless Ones channeled for me in 30 days, and then it took us 5 months to edit it, I think, at that point. And it has sections in it. For example, if you have a legal challenge and there are things that are happening in your family or in inheritances or in different kinds of legal things, there's a chapter in there called the Silver Chalice. It teaches you how to actually put everything in the chalice, good, bad, and different, from your own perspective, and put that in there and heal that. There's a chapter on relationships, how relationships are going to be moving from 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 as we move into more of a spiritual connection. There are information points there about the chakras, how to open them, and about light and how we are light, and about osmosis. So the sunlight on water is really becoming molecular in our consciousness, going into and opening spaces that we have pain with, or challenge or trauma, or someplace that we're holding energy, and just to begin to feel like we could move the water in and out. There's just a lot of wonderful principles in there from the Nameless Ones that actually encompass, I think, most of the questions that we have about life here. It goes into the Akashic records, how to go into your own record, how to find your own understandings of things. It's really a comprehensive kind of manual.
How to live life.
From your soul.
From your soul. So we have a question. Any tips on how to connect to our soul?
Well, sure. Do you want me to do like a 3-minute exercise? We have time.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm just going to move my camera down here. Okay, so I'm going to take my fingers, index and third finger, right, and put them right at my xiphoid process. So you want to take your ribs, come around from your ribs and find your xiphoid process, and just put your fingers there. Okay, ground your feet and close your eyes. Just begin to breathe. So we might imagine a golden light coming in from the top of our head and down through our body. making sure our feet are connected. We have a stone that we work with in soul support, which has our footprints and our name on it, way down in the core of the earth. So we could imagine going down to that core, connecting in down there, just so we're grounded. So it's like a flow of energy from the top all the way down through our feet and connecting to the Great Mother. And relaxing our shoulders and focusing right now on our fingers. And so with an inhalation, we breathe in and we press lightly into that space with our fingertips. And then when we exhale, we feel an opening happening there. Just a little opening. Maybe a gateway or a portal or a doorway. And every time we breathe in, we open the doorway a little bit more. And then when we breathe out, we open it a little bit more. And we ask for the presence to be available to us. We ask that all that we are now ready to receive be available, open out for us. And that this doorway begins to steady us, open us to understanding, and support us in experiencing the essence of our soul, which is our purity, our clarity, and our truth. So just for a moment, I'll stop talking and just open that space as you breathe. If your hands want to do something different, if you want to open them, open your hands or arms. Just feel what wants to happen. And inside that soul space, which Mary Magdalene calls the seed of light. And we just open the seed of light. And then we can continue our conversation from that place, or acknowledging that place, or using that place.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah.
What a gift that is.
And it's simple.
And it's so simple.
It's simple, Susie.
Exactly.
It's so simple. Oh
Because
my goodness.
it belongs to us. It's us, and it's the true us, which is the beauty of it. It's really who we are.
Yeah.
And it's the remembering. I think that's it. What you said it at the very beginning, isn't it? That like we should learn this maybe when I think we know it when we're about 5 or 6 or 7, when we're quite young.
Yes.
Then it can be beaten out of us. And I mean, but it can be just, it takes a bit of time to reconnect to that part. When people reconnect, I think they recognize it. There's definitely a remembering or recognition when you reconnect, however that happens for you. But there's that part in between where it's just, it's like it's been erased from our memory or something. And yeah, maybe that's part of the journey, though. Maybe that's part of why we're here, is to have our moments of, of the illusion and of being caught up in it all. And then that awakening happenings, or that realization or remembering happens. And it's a key moment. I think what we're noticing on this podcast is everybody who's been on, has had incredible stories and experiences. And there's been that moment where it's like that seed or that spark has kind of woken up in them. And So maybe it's inevitable that we'll all get that tap on the shoulder. But what a beautiful world it would be if, if we were all living this way, I suppose.
Yeah. And it's also a choice,
Mm,
because now you know how to open that space, and
mm,
then you can notice, well, when do I do that? And how often do I do that? And if I did that when I was doing this project, what would happen? And if I
yeah.
did this in relationship to someone who I have a challenge with, what would happen? So we can use it as a very strong central choice in relationship and in life and in creation and for our health, for everything.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's also William Marshall's message, right? If we can keep our heads about us and make the right choices, put our attention in the right place. Something you read, I want to ask you what it means. You talked about holographic meaning. Holographic. What is? Talk about that.
Well, the hologram has all of us in it. And if we live from a place, well, the way we teach it is through a circle. You put everything in a circle, and then it becomes, in a sense, a hologram of your life or your experience, like a pizza pie, right? And you can begin to use energy from one section into another section. So, for example, let's just take a very simple example of 4 slices of pizza pie: mind, physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual. So body, mind, emotion, spirit. Okay, you just put those there. Some people, like I just turned 77. Okay, so what I would do is my mind is pretty sharp, and so is my spirit. So I would use some of the energy in those 2 sections to go towards my body, for example. Or if I didn't have an emotional response, I was happy with my spiritual energy into that space. So a hologram can be used to think about oneness, to think about interconnection, to use as a tool for making everything congruent and authentic, which is part of what we do in the work, and also to reflect that there really isn't any separation, that everything can come together, is already together. That's actually the truth of that, is everything's already together and we separate it.
Mm-hmm.
So is that something you use for yourself, and then once I go into the world that way, now I'm authentically me, and things go easier at the grocery store or wherever? Or would you put other people's pieces in that pie?
Any way you want to do it, Kathy. It's like it's
Imagine.
kind of everything's there, and what we focus on, we give energy to, right? Thought follows
Yep.
energy, right?
Yep.
Energy follows awareness, right? So anything we put into any kind of consciousness, my friend Jane used to make those holograms to understand how to put energy into creation. What was first? What could she use to ground the situation or the project? She was my editor, so she would do, and we had so much going on that she would kind of put everything into the circles, and we would teach people how to use the circle as a way to unify their own experience, and then you can add anything you want to it if you want to unify anything in addition to that.
Amazing. I love that idea. I've never heard that before. Yeah, thank you for explaining it. Another phrase that you used, we were talking about before we started this intentional community, a global field. Talk about that, connections with people in other countries, morphic field, liminal realm. What does that mean to you, global field?
Well, it is a morphic field, and the global field, when we work with individuals, just as with the horses, we find the place of interconnection vibrationally, and hold that place for the entire time we're together. And it's the components of it are always different, and yet the outcome is always the same. And I'm knocking on wood, of course, but there's a lot of love. Love is the thing that brings us together. It doesn't matter. We've had people who are so diverse, and I've said, oh my God. and by the end, they love each other, they care for each other, and they support each other, right? So this field, wherever someone is originating from, wherever they live, they take that field back with them, right? And then we continue to connect with them, and they connect with us in different ways. And that field then becomes an environment, right? And then the environment becomes a way for other people to join into that. And that's how I've had to do it, because I couldn't have it here in Vermont, where people just came and came and came and came. So what we're doing is going to different places. We're coming to Canada. We've been to Ireland, been to Scotland and England and Hungary and other countries. So it's the idea that this is available for everyone. And you don't have to come to Soul Support to find it, because obviously being connected in the heart, first off, without judgment, with total acceptance of each other. And I just wrote a book called the Soul Recognition book. And I take people through it step by step. Like, how do we get to the place where we are able to accept others and ourselves, to co-create without hierarchy? We have at least 4 facilitators in everything we do, so that there's no hierarchy. You know, I get paid the same as my facilitators. We're just doing it together. And that's part of the model, is sharing power, is doing our best to be examples of that.
Talk about some powerful activism right there.
Yeah.
Collaboration, working. Amazing. So Ramsey asked, when we did this, connecting to our soul, is it contagious if we start connecting to our soul? Would it affect our neighbors too? And you just answered that about the global field.
Yeah. Well, there is a global field, obviously. And so it's what we tap into and how we tap into it, and our intention makes a lot of difference in it too. Yeah. Growing it. We want to grow it, don't we? You know, we want to grow it.
That's right.
I think a lot of that came about during COVID, you know, when we were all in lockdown. I think we all had to kind of, you know, dig deep and rethink a lot of, you know, things that we were doing, for example, or things that we believed even about, you know, having to travel or to go places. And we all sort of harnessed the technology, and suddenly, you know, I know from my experience of doing online meditation, suddenly you're connected to people all over the world, and you're getting to know this community, and it's incredible what we can do. I'm a big one for harnessing technology, because when we use it from the heart space, with the intention of, you know, creating compassionate communities, with, you know, just with loving kindness, you know, and just being able to have those moments of connection, especially during those times of, you know, isolation, as people living on their own and that. So I think we all had to think outside the box, and that was, I think that really made a huge difference, that, you know, people like you don't have to travel maybe as much as you did in the past. And all the stuff is available through technology, you know, and I love that.
And we found, you know, it's actually okay on Zoom.
Yeah.
We can connect. We can really feel each other and feel the love, and it works.
Yeah. And even when you talk about, you know, intentional work, healing, you know, healing intentions, the power of intention, the power of that connection and collaboration. And once we have the clarity, I believe that's, you know, that can be the key point, like the clarity of intention, the clarity of, you know, what we're all coming together for. And seeing, then, okay, you turn off the Zoom and you go about your day, and it has a ripple effect. Like, you know, not just in your own family, but I think beyond your community, even with people you don't know. It's how we walk, you know, it's off the map, like how we walk down the street, or how we go for or shopping or whatever. Like, so I have to ask you before our time runs out, because William Marshall
Marshall, I knew that was coming.
is a very persistent
So
energy.
okay, so I was driving a van. I was going to France with a group, and we were supposed to fly. And then there was, I think, a volcano in Iceland, and we couldn't fly, and I had to drive a van. So I went across the ferry from the UK into France, and there were these ladies sitting next to me who knew of William Marshall, and we're talking about him, and they were showing me his effigy, and I'm driving, I'm on the right side of the road and the wrong side of the car, and they're showing me this, and I'm like, and the one woman said, well, I just hawked my grandmother's pearls for this organization that I support. And all of a sudden, and I don't know who William Marshall is, right? All of a sudden, he's over my right shoulder and he's saying, you have to take care of yourself first. So you do not honor a religious organization. You do not honor any other space other than yourself first. Anything that's of value to you, hold that value. And then he began. And they told me it was going to be like a 7-hour trip. Well, it was 17 hours to drive to this place. And he was just showering me with grace. I was the only one that could drive this van for, the reasons that we all know. And he was just showering me the whole time. Then he began to talk to the individuals that were there. And one of them was living someplace like his old house or his old land in the UK or something. I don't know. There were a lot of, I don't keep all those details, but there was a lot of talk about him and people who had actually been studying him or looking into him or whatever. And I'm like, what is this about? And the whole trip that we were there for probably 10 days was all based upon William Marshall. So, and we're coming back in the ferry and he's channeling to each one of them individually. And so we have a group. People are welcome to join. It's every month and it's for free. And he gives us a message, and they are absolutely profound messages. And he talks about, what I would like to share was he says that before they went into battle, they would link their third eyes. So there's actually, sometimes it looked, when he was talking about it, like they were actually touching third eyes, which sometimes you do, when you're getting a blessing from a Rinpoche or something, they'll put their forehead, so that he knew where everyone was, how everyone could be protected and kept safe, and how they knew beyond a doubt what was happening in the periphery of whatever engagement they were in. And when he had to dispatch someone to protect himself or someone else, he always brought them into union first with himself before he did that. There was this sense of consciousness that he carried, which was, I feel like it was Christ consciousness. I feel like he was an incarnation of Christ. That's what I feel. And when my friend Nancy and I were going to take a group right before COVID, so we couldn't do that, but we were going to take a group to Wales and Ireland and Scotland and England and France, and the body of water that is in between those islands, those countries. We were going to go to reseed the crystals that he said he buried, many, I don't know, in the 12th century, I guess, that he buried, and to reestablish the light. And he says that there's a crystal of creation, that it's a huge crystal, and it was in the bottom of the I guess it's an ocean. Is it the bay?
Yeah, it's the Irish Sea, between Ireland and England, the Irish Sea.
Yeah, the Irish Sea. So he said it was buried in the Irish Sea at the time of creation, so that all of the energy of that consciousness, and what he calls the light magnificent, which is what we've established, each person, there's this kind of light technology and this kind of light methodology. We all have these different ways we practice light. Well, he says all of them are part of the light magnificent, and that was what was actually instilled in the crystal, and it's moving out. So we've talked about this for now almost 5 years with him, about what happened to this, how to use this crystal, and it's absolutely amazing. Yeah.
Wow. Because I was informed at the end of I was leading this meditation and this lady came up with your book and she said, I really feel like you need to read this book. And I was like, sure. I took a photograph of it and I said, I will check it out. But I was busy. I didn't get round to it for a while. It was interesting because I was in Santa Bome at Mary Magdalene's cave.
Yeah.
And so then I ended up back in that part of England again. And I was doing another kind of let's just say with a group, we were doing some stuff. And one of the women was saying Magna Carta, Magna Carta. And then a couple of days later, there was something about King John. Now, my history of kind of medieval England was slim to none. I wouldn't have had a clue, who all these people were. But when we were doing this other retreat in this location, I did some online research and I found out, oh, this is where King John, his entrails were buried and his heart was here because it had been a former monastery. So that sort of sparked something in us. I felt like we were being guided all of the time. And I still hadn't gotten around to reading the book. I done all of these various things had happened. And suddenly I finally got to read the book and I went, oh my gosh, this is the great knight. This is the guy.
Yeah.
And so I know my great friend, and she was a former guest on the podcast too, Sue Cooper, is collaborating with you and William Martian by all accounts on the 19th of June with an online program. And I know Sue is very excited about that, and lots of people that I think we know in common are really looking forward to it too. So yeah, I've spent many hours driving around Ireland, Hookhead, along the coastline there where they would have landed, where William Marshall would have set up kind of I suppose he set up the first villages and towns in Ireland. He became the Lord Lieutenant, I think, of Ireland at one stage.
Yes.
And Sue and I were on they were like little mini pilgrimages with William Marshall. So there's a lot of interest in a lot of people that I know and that Sue knows. So we're really excited about the 19th of June. And I think we said the time was going to be about 4 or 5 p.m. in British summertime. So
4.
Is it 4 p.m.? Okay, that's good to know.
Yep.
And so I will put that on our website, our soul support website, so people can join that. We have a soul recognition happening in Saguenay, Canada, that people could actually come to. That's in August. And we have in January a leadership training, which is basically how to incorporate a lot of the principles we've been talking about. That's going to be in Montreal in January. And yes, maybe a snowstorm. And we have a very interesting opportunity in the end of September to October 4th. And that's at Sandbridge, which you can think of as Virginia Beach. It's in that area in Virginia. And it's a whole week with community. The ocean is there. We have a pool inside and outside, and we're going to be doing warm water soul recognitions. And that's at 96-degree temperature, kind of similar to Watsu. The 14th of June, we have the Nameless Ones from 12 to 2, and that's a free program. And if you join our free membership, you can have all of these access points. You can read and listen and really experience the depth of what Soul Support Systems is about.
Beautiful. I'll put all these links that we've heard will be in the description underneath. When you go to YouTube, the links will be there so that everybody can find you.
Thank you.
This feels like such important work to me.
It is important work, and I need all of you to. I mean, I really feel like it's time to connect, Susie. With what's going on and how we can work together, because we need each other.
Totally.
Really,
I agree 100%. And together we're really making waves. I really feel like, this morphic field that we're creating, I think we're co-creating a bigger field.
Yes.
We're joining forces, and we're really all, I think, living our truth now, living from that place that you so beautifully brought us to with that simple practice. That's the seed. It's right here in the center.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's how we join. And that's the way it's going to be. We're going to live from there.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
Where do we start to thank you? You've been such a beautiful guest. I could listen to you for another hour at least. I think you've lots more to share. I feel like you might have to come back on again sometime if you'd be so gracious. But thank you so much for your beautiful stories, your lovely sharing, your beautiful energy and personality, and the practice that you shared with everybody from all of us here.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for your continuing work. I really appreciate both of you very much.